Riffing and rocking with Henri Cash of Starcrawler. Hey everyone, I'm Chris Keys for Premier Guitar. Today I'm hanging out in Nashville, Tennessee, obviously my home, but I'm joined, like I said, by Henri Cash of Starcrawler out in LA. Henry, how you doing?
I'm doing really good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've been a quick and fast fan of Starcrawler, and I think the three things that jump out at me is how you guys perform on stage, obviously. Your clothing, which is like obviously nudie suit, big nod to my current hometown here in Nashville. And then third is the unique instruments that you use on stage. And I think everyone's here to talk about gear. So let's start talking about the guitar you played in. And I think it's a cool collaboration that you can elaborate on as much as you can.
Yeah. So I think this one has a long backstory that starts out with this one over here. So this has 3 strings on it. I don't know if you could tell.
Yep.
But that all started when I was probably around, so I'm just going to do the whole thing.
Go for it.
When I grew up, my dad was a musician. There was always music in the house. He was primarily like a blues player, a lot of slide. Every single guitar in the house was in open tuning, which kind of fucking sucks when you're learning guitar because you pick up a guitar and you can't really do anything on it. But he got this, I think it's 80s Epiphone, and it was also in open tuning, but when I played it, I broke part of the bridge. I don't know if you could see, but a couple of the saddles for it were just broken, but it was in open tuning, and so I had to take the strings off, and I was just playing the first 3 strings how they were, like D, A, D. And it was super easy. I realized that, whoa, I could just put my finger down and it works like that. And, I was figuring out cool little chords that I could do. And I didn't have to think as much because, half the strings, half the mind power.
Yeah.
And I was definitely aware of bands, like I loved Presidents of the United States of America, like Peaches.
Yeah, Peaches.
And then this other band called Morphine, Mark Salmon, 2-string slide bass. And so I grew up around all that and like the B-52s. I love the B-52s. And that's, like 4 strings. And so I had just the DAD on. And then my dad came in and he was like, you're going to fuck up the guitar if you have all the tension on one side of the neck. If you're going to play like that, at least put it down the middle. And that's when he's, tune it to G. And so I just took the first three strings and I put them on the second and tuned it to G, D, G. And it was really cool. I didn't notice it at first, but it gave me like sort of Rolling Stones vibes without, having to think about what the top strings were doing. And so I started playing like that, and I was mainly playing drums. And I don't know if I mentioned, but so when I was about 9 years old, I saw It Might Get Loud. And after like feeling kind of alone as like listening to not like Miley Cyrus in school, like listening to all this blues and like Led Zeppelin, seeing like Jack White's part and how he was just like alone in his room with like a drum set recording made me feel like that I wasn't alone and that if I pushed hard, I could do it.
Yeah.
And like that always stuck with me. And so like from then on, I was just like in my room, sitting on like GarageBand and, you know, playing away on 3 strings and, you know, bass and drums and making songs. And then when I met Arrow, I'd never played guitar in a band before. I played drums and bass, but she asked me if I played guitar, and I brought this, and this is what we started doing our first stuff with, just because, you know, it was easier, and I had some songs that are already written on it, and it was pretty cool. Cut to like years later, so I played that in the beginning of the band. I played that one, and then I got another cheap Epiphone as the backup, just because, you know, they're like $100. There's a black one back there. But then I was at the NAMM show, I think 3 or 4 years ago, with my aunt who makes guitar straps. Her name's Jody Head. Like, if I used another kind of guitar straps, I would be murdered. But, and then the booth right across was Parsons Guitars. And I remembered, you know, from watching the movie, I was like, oh, I think those are the same type of guitars Jack played in those movies. And I went over there and I talked to him and I was like, I really like your guitars and your work. I can never afford anything that you do, but, you know, it's nice to meet you. And like over just like the 3 days of, you know, like being bored, I started talking to him more about, you know, like 3 strings and stuff. And eventually it became the I want to make you a guitar kind of thing. And he had this guitar called the Bat that he was doing, and it was brown and it had 2 pickups, and I was playing this White Falcon back here, and I thought, well, our first record came out and I was like, our colors are kind of white and red, and I only use 1 pickup really. Even on a Telecaster, I'm just always on the bridge pickup and just with the Bigsby. And I put the Bigsby on that because I'm also a huge Neil Young fan. I mean, who isn't?
Yeah,
like one of the most underrated guitar players ever. Like when he does a solo, it's just perfect. But 1 year later, I got this, and I've been playing it ever since. And so Randy made this. You know, it has like a cool little pedal, one pickup, 1 volume knob, and then just a pedal inside. And I took it around the world and, you know, threw it, and it's got all beat up, and it still works really well, and I love it.
Now, Henry, you said there's a pedal inside?
Yeah, there's a pedal inside.
So what kind of circuitry are like? Is it a fuzz? Is it a boost?
Okay, so there's this guy named R2R Electric.
No.
He makes these treble boosters that I think everybody now is using because they're just so good, but he makes them in his kitchen. Like I think he's made like 700 of them, but they're the best treble boosters. I have one on my board too, but he had the idea that he had this old, I guess in 1966 or something, Gretsch put a treble booster inside their guitar, and they had the circuit, and it was kind of like plastic around it. And Chris had one of them. I don't know how he got a hold of one, but I contacted him and I was like, what if you put a treble booster inside? And he says, I have the actual Gretsch one we could try to recreate. And so he put that inside these guitars, and they sound amazing.
Now, is it something you use all the time, or is it kind of like just subtlety, like in a sense, like, you know, you're going to go for it, you kick it on, or is that pretty much always engaged?
When I go for a solo, I turn it on.
Okay.
But because it's a lot.
Can we hear like a on and off difference?
Yeah, let me play another one.
Okay.
But so yeah, and then so this was the first one, and I would be playing this half the set, and then regular 6-string half the set.
Okay.
And then Randy thought that maybe I'd probably like a 6-string version. So, and then I haven't really been playing tellies ever since. But of course in the studio. But they're just they're so comfortable to play, and they're light that it's like the best guitar to run around with, and it's like to my specs. So
now I can't see with the zoom camera here, but it looks like the center there where the neck pickup should be or would be. Is that hollow? Is the guitar hollow or semi-hollow?
So it's semi-hollow. It's chambered.
Okay.
But so I'm a huge AC/DC fan, and like the Malcolm Young Jet where he had 3 pickups in and he took 2 of them out.
Oh yeah.
And they were just open. Randy had it already like this, but when I saw it, that's immediately what I thought. And it must do that thing to it, but it does have a super, like... It's really nice. It's a full sound. But here's the treble booster on. It's...
Considerable for sure.
Yeah, and it's really nice, and it has a cool little red light there. And then TV Jones made this custom pickup, which was really cool for this one too, that has red on the inside and goes with the binding and everything. And then the Bigsby on this has red on the inside of that too, but yeah.
Now, you said that this was kind of a thing that Randy had built before, the Bat model. Now, is there anything specific that you were asking for, or was it kind of all his creation?
Yeah, well, I have 3 of them, and we've kind of been changing things over the years. But one of my favorite parts about it is that it has this little lamb inlaid in the neck, and I wanted the Filtertron. He hadn't done them with the Filtertrons that I know of. And I just wanted it really simple. I wanted 1 volume, 1 pickup, not anything fancy. It was his idea to put a pedal in it. But I just wanted a really simple guitar that could be thrown around, but sounded really good and full, but still had that bite and richness. And it's really achieved that. And I've always loved Gretsch guitars. And so it was kind of in between the White Falcon here and his own creation. And it really became a really cool thing. But yeah, it started, I can't say too much about it, but it's a partnership. This one, at least, is a partnership between Gretsch and Randy. And I'm really looking forward to it.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. That's a cool thing to have such a historic company and a really, aggressively unique builder behind you is supporting your, musicianship.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I never would have imagined being like the 9-year-old watching Jack play like his triple jets, ever thinking that, oh yeah, I'd have a guitar made by the same guy even,
Now, you had mentioned that has a unique or kind of fun inlay with the lamb. I'm wondering, because I'm familiar with Randy's work, because we did a profile on him probably about 10 or 11 years ago, and he puts bones and weird things into his guitars. Are there any things in like that with your models?
He's one of those guitar makers where he doesn't just make the guitars. Every guitar is like an art piece.
Yeah.
They really are just pieces of art. And so there's secret things inside this guitar that mean something to him and to me. And he has these there's poems on the back of the headstocks, and if you connect them all, it's a big long thing.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot of really cool things on the inside. If somebody opens up the guitar, they'll find some really interesting stuff.
Some Easter eggs.
Some Easter eggs, and every single one is different. And these have a kind of contoured top, and then there's this one where it's more of a flat guy, and but they're all super great. And some have a matte headstock, but we were just figuring it out over the years, trying to really tweak it to where, it's the best guitar, and I think we've really come across that.
Now, any of these 3 featured on, I know that your newest record that came out in 2019 was Devour You. Are any of these 3 Parsons guitars on that? Or
yeah.
Okay.
So this 3-string was all over that, on Bet My Brains, She Gets Around, anything 3-string. Let me just show you what that sounds like, because it's pretty. It has the TV Jones in it that he made for Billy Gibbons. So it's kind of, I think it's PAF style. I don't really know the technical, but it's really good. And it doesn't sound like a normal Filtertron. But here we go. So a lot of the time, since I'm working with 3 strings, I'll either there's only so much you can do in G.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'll either capo it, or I'll use this drop octave pedal to really get it to sound full. So like the Bet My Brains thing. But you can cover a lot of range with just 3 strings, which is pretty cool.
Well, I was going to ask, it's you know, this show is just dedicated to gear and the accumulation of gear, but sometimes you'll hear a player, a guitarist, or a collector, or artist will say, sometimes they'll think or put themselves in a box to think like less is more. So I was curious about how the 3 strings sometimes maybe almost makes you more creative.
Well, it's not one of those things where I tried to limit myself. If anything, I was just trying to think less, really, because when I'm on this, I'm not really thinking when I'm playing this, as opposed to when you're playing in a 6-string tuning, you're thinking about, okay, I'm in this key, I could solo here, solo here. I'm just, you know, playing. And it's weird because I've been playing it for so long, before I even really knew how to play guitar, that it's just become kind of when I sit down with it, it just feels right. And before I had this guitar, I was using the Epiphones, and they were really hard to play because in order for them to somewhat stay in tune, I'd take like a baritone set and use the middle strings of that, which was 46, 36, and 26.
Wow.
But that's also the first 3 strings of a 10 set, which would have been a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
But then there's this really good guitar tech that set up all my guitars, John Westcott, and he really helped me early on set them up to where they were easier to play, and they actually played like guitars, which was really cool.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty crucial.
Yeah, definitely, because before that it was definitely a struggle. And still with the Epiphones, it was a struggle until I got this thing that was kind of made for it. But
Well, should you introduce some more of your friends here behind you?
yeah, so there's a lot of really great gear here. But so I just got this, which I'm really stoked about, because just the way it looks, I like it. Has this cool belt binding, and I'm a huge Chuck Berry fan. And I remember some of the first footage I saw of Chuck Berry. He was playing one of these, and it didn't seem to fit. And that's the same reason why I have the 355.
Okay.
is
Yeah.
Most of the licks that I do are pretty much just Chuck Berry licks, just sped up. And that's the same thing with like Angus Young or any of those dudes. It's just Chuck Berry and like Little Richard. And a lot of the 3-string stuff too is just like sped up, like R.L. Burnside type licks, you know? But yeah, this thing's really cool. It's got a really interesting tone. I'm also a huge Billy Zoom fan, and he uses the Silverjet and same kind of pickups. So
Yeah, let's hear this. Man, it sounds good.
yeah, it's a good sounding guitar.
Now, what would be like another guitar you would take on tour with you, like if you were going to play, you know, actually go play shows?
Yeah, so I'm a huge Tele guy. A Tele was the first guitar that I played and felt like, whoa, this is a really nice guitar. And so I got this kind of right after we started playing. I walked into Imperial Vintage Guitar and picked it up. And it's one of the road-worn ones, but it was one of the first ones they did, which weren't road-worn. They just had the neck that was worn down.
Okay.
So all this was not here before I played it, which was nice. But the necks on these feel really good. They're pretty big and chunky, and I've been around with it for a long time, and it's really one of my favorite guitars.
All right, Henry, before you kind of show us what this sounds like, what would be a song or what would be, you know, a part of a set that this will get brought out on?
Yeah, we have this song called I Love LA, and Let Her Be, and pretty much most of the stuff on our first record is either a Tele or the 3-string.
Okay.
And, but yeah, so like. But yeah, it has this really cool sound, but
Especially paired with the fuzz on the I Love LA, that has a really good fuzz tone with that Tele.
yeah. And I think for the record, I was using the JHS Muffaletta for the fuzz sound on the chorus, but that was just a super reverb with this mic, the AEA R92, I think is what it is. I always forget like the numbers, but and I try to keep everything pretty much how it was, and I think I was using an Oxblood as my kind of like pre going into it,
Okay.
even though it's just an overdrive. But yeah, and you can get cool like. But yeah.
All right, Henry, that's a cool Telecaster, and I know that was something you used early in the band. Now, in recent years, I've seen you play on stage with a Tele Custom. Tell me about that guitar.
So I didn't have, when we first played, when we were in the studio, I used the producer's guitar, which was a Tele Custom. I think his was a 74, and I always really liked the sound of that guitar, but I couldn't afford an old Tele. But so I got this thing, and I was using this for a super long time, and I loved it. But then I saw on Reverb old Tele Custom that was, you know, reasonably priced for once, where I think it was on eBay. Which is the cool thing is that people, if you find something on Reverb, everybody sees it because they have the alerts and stuff.
Yeah.
One day I was on eBay scrolling, and I saw one, and it wasn't, you know, it was under, you know, it was like, I think $1,500 or something, and I'd saved up all my money from touring, and I was like, okay, this is the one guitar. This is gonna be like the most expensive guitar I've ever bought, and I got it, and it was all original. There wasn't a mark on it. It was a super clean neck. It was from the original owner, and then I went. It was like a couple days. I got it the day before tour. And I kind of committed to, okay, this is the guitar I'm going to be playing on tour. And I stepped out on stage, and the pickup, the bridge pickup was screaming.
Ooh.
It needed to be wax potted, so any sort of overdrive or anything, you know, you weren't playing for a second, and it was just screeching, and which was a huge problem. And we made it up to Seattle, and there's Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar up there. And I brought the guitar in, and I told them what was happening, and they wax potted the pickup for me and gave me a replacement pickup for the time being while they were going to wax pot it, and then they were going to send the pickup back to me. And I felt kind of bad because the guitar had never been touched before. It was just all original. And they put in the Lawler. It's a Lawler, I don't know which one it is, but it's still in there. I got the pickup back, wax potted, but I was like, wow, this Lawler sounds so good. I just don't know if I want to put the other one back in yet. But I will get to it, but it sounds really good. I never really used the wide range pickup on it. I've used it in the studio a couple times, but I'm pretty much always on the bridge. But they're really bright. I think the tone pots on these are 1K or something. I could be totally wrong, but they're like the 70s, but they're super bright, great guitars.
Well, with an introduction like that, man, let's hear it.
But yeah, it's really a nice tone. I don't know if you can hear the difference between the guitars since I'm going through
Yeah, I can.
pedals. But
Surprisingly, I can. Yeah.
it's one of my favorite guitars, and I pretty much would play it on half the set before I got the 6-string Parsons. And then as the first, I was just playing that yellow Tele all the time. And then when I got this became the main one that I was playing.
All right, and you already touched on the 3-string setup that you use in terms of gauges. What about for the 6 strings? What brand and gauge do you use?
So I use 11s, and I've been using Ernie balls for a couple years now. My guy over there, Robert, is amazing, and he always hooks it up. And he gets me the custom 3-string sets too, so I don't have to go buy whole sets of strings and waste half of them, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I use just the 11 gauge, standard 11s, and then on some of the Gibsons I use 10s, just to get more of those Skinnered bends in.
Are you using standard tuning or any other tunings?
So I'm using standard, and then I'm using some drop Ds.
Okay.
Certain guitars. Which brings me to the next Tele, which I really like. I have a bunch of Teles. Teles are definitely, I feel the most comfortable on Teles because I've been playing them for so long.
Well, let's meet this other guy.
Yeah, so my uncle, Brad Rice, was a huge inspiration on me as a kid because he was doing it. He was playing guitar on, TV, and I'd watch like the late night shows and see him doing it. Mm-hmm. And one night, I forget like when, but he was playing the Greek with, I think it was like Jack Ingram or somebody, but it was like a country band. Mm-hmm. But he brought a B-bender out, and I got to play with it for a second, and it was super cool. And it had always been in the back of my mind that I want one of them one day. And I got super into Graham Parsons and the Byrds and the Flying Burrito Brothers, and I was really looking for a B-bender. And then a good friend, Chris Masterson, lent me his B-bender for about 6 months. And it was a James Trussart B-bender, but I loved it, and I was like, okay, this is it, I need to get one. And so I'm a huge Clarence White fan, who was the first B-bender from the Byrds.
Yep.
And I wanted to recreate that guitar. So I got one of the, 50s, regular, just 50s reissue Teles. I think it's the same road-worn neck, and tried to make it as close to his with the nudie sticker as possible. And I think it's now owned by Marty Stewart, who I also love.
Yeah.
But it's got the banjo tuners that you could drop down. But I used this on our last record on a couple songs called Pennies, No More Pennies, and Born Asleep. And I capo it up, and yeah.
Yeah, No More Pennies is like something you could hear on like Some Girls or something with the Rolling Stones. Like it has that, yeah.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I was like, man, I heard it. I was like, I feel like there's a B-bender there. And so this just, like, you're just clarifying and justifying what I heard.
Yeah, I also put some slide on it. I have an Asher lap steel that's really good. And it's really interesting because it doesn't sound like, I also have a Magnatone lap steel that's really bright. But the Asher sounds more like a Les Paul, like a really good Les Paul, and it has humbuckers in it, but it distorts really nicely. But it makes it sound, when you're playing steel on it, it doesn't sound too country, if that makes sense. But yeah, my brother's been playing pedal steel with us recently.
Well, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so we got an old Fender 400, and that's super bright and definitely sounds super country. But this thing's really cool.
Yeah, what tuning are you using?
So yeah, this thing, it's in a drop G, but it's capoed up.
All right.
And I've never really played it sitting down, but I'll try to. So,
well, if we need to stand up, stand up.
Sounds like this. it's just, it's more fun than it is anything, you know?
Yeah, it's a very expressive tool for you to have.
Yeah, and it's a good change up in the set from doing like kind of like punk and going really fast and slowing down and getting to, you know, move my arm a bunch. But yeah.
Was there a lot? Was there like a learning curve when you had your friends and you borrowed it? Was it like I've never really spent much time with a bender.
Yeah, his was a different. His was coming from the back of it, and so I got the body and it didn't have the B bender in it, and I sent it to this guy Matney Benders. I think his name's Darren Matney, but I found him on Facebook, and it was just he made B benders, and I was like, it wasn't the reverb or anything, so I was like, I'm just gonna send him my guitar and hope everything goes fine. And I sent him the body, and he put in the bender, and it's amazing, and it stays in tune really well, which a lot of them have a problem with. And yeah, I can't say enough good things about it. And it looks like, you know, the whole Clarence White thing.
Yeah, it looks like the bender, man. It looks like number one.
Yeah, and I love, my mom's a huge Marty Stewart fan, so I grew up seeing it even before I was into like the Byrds.
Yeah.
Which was cool. But yeah, it also has this satellite badge, which brings me to one of my newest guitars that I've got. I'll try to be a bit faster so we could hit some more stuff. But this is really cool. It's like the new era of lawsuit era guitars, you know?
Yeah. Because
the satellite coronet, I have a, you know, SG, or technically still Les Paul Jr. 61, and they sound and feel very similar. And I haven't played a new Gibson that feels as good as this, because it weirdly feels pretty old and nice. But I just used this on the new record for a song that's going to be released. But I really love this guitar. It's being loaned to me, but it's going to be hard to get it away from my hands because I really like it.
I was going to say, how did you get turned on to it? Because Satellite is pretty much primarily known as a amp company.
So a friend of mine named O, who tours with us doing sound a lot, he hipped me to a lot of the gear I know in general and kind of eggs me on whenever he sees something. But with a lot of these amps, but he's in San Diego and Adam's in San Diego.
Yep.
And so I'd just always be in there and I was like, well, I'm using Fender Amps. That's it. And then he kind of knew that once I tried them, I would use them. So I was like trying to avoid them for the longest time. And then I used one of the satellite heads during quarantine, and it mixed with the Fender super well because it had a more in between, like a Marshall-y and a tweed thing, and it with like my Vibreverb sounded so good together.
Nice.
And I always use 2 amps at once, and so he was sending up some amps for me to use. I got the white amp right now, which is his white amp, which is super good. But then he sent up this guitar as kind of a surprise, and I played it, and I was super amazed. It also has Curtis Novak pickups in it, or pickup, and that sounds really good. And it doesn't sound exactly like the old pickup, but I kind of like it even more. It has a little bit more top end in a way. I don't know how to explain it, but
maybe we can hear it real quick.
But yeah, it's got a growl to it.
I was gonna say, it's a rock machine.
Yeah, and you know, I can't play it too hard because I'm not used to the just single stop tail piece, but it sits in a mix really nicely, which is really cool.
Cool. Cool, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop interrupting you so much, and we're gonna breeze through a couple more friends.
So that's great. Adam's a great builder. I love using guitars made by people I know, and also amps. Like going to the Fender factory and getting to meet people that work on the guitars that I play. There's something really special about that. And when we were on tour with the Distillers in Detroit, I was playing the Tellies, and I met Gabriel from Echo Park Guitars, and he brought this thing, and it was super cool. He just brought it to the dressing room. I think he was going to give it to Brody, and then she kind of did the thing where it was like, give it to the kid instead. And it's a really great playing guitar. The neck is huge, which I really like. But I'm proud of this guitar because it was my first headstock repair by myself.
Wow.
And a sound guy, it was on a stand. He tripped on the stand in Germany or something, and the headstock just right down here. And I hit up Gabriel and I said, it cracked, what do I do? And he said, just go get some wood glue and some clamps. And so I went to the hardware store in Germany, and I was trying to figure out how to say glue. And they were looking at me like I was crazy, and I was like, wood glue, like not regular glue, wood glue. And it was a process, but then I clamped it for a couple days, and it's still intact. So yeah.
Nice job.
It's a great guitar. But yeah, I'm going to stop playing them so we could get to more.
Okay.
Just showing them, if that's cool.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll play some of them. And then quarantine happened. Oh, another great guitar is this. Another great builder, Doug Cower, builds these Banshees that are really cool. This one's my dad's, but it's set up for slide. And this pickup, I think it is a Lawler too, but it sounds really good with the open tuning. I think it's in open G right now, but something special about it, just volume and tone. I toured with this. One of the 3 strings, Norwegian Air broke one, the neck, and we needed to fly out the next day. We were like home for a day, so I strung this up with 3 strings and did a whole tour with this, not being set up or anything. And that was an experience, but it held it really well and played super fun. It was a fun guitar, and I could throw it around and it didn't break, which was cool.
Yeah, it looks super cool, man.
Cool. And then I'll touch on these briefly. I can't really demo them because I don't have a mic set up. But before quarantine, I didn't really have any acoustic guitars. And when you're sitting at home, your neighbors can only handle so much. So it became a necessity. And I found this 1966 Gibson Country Western. I wanted a hummingbird, but these are hummingbirds for half the price.
Yeah. Because
they don't have the frickin', they're the same thing, they just don't have the bird on the pick guard and different finish. But it's probably one of my favorite guitars. Every time I sit down with it, I feel like I'm getting somewhere. I got this from a friend, my friend Mike. He has an account called Fender Finder. He's like a super guitar geek, and he always shows me cool stuff. But this is I think it's a 53 or 54 LG-1, and LG-1 or LG-2, I'm not really sure, but it's really cool guitar. And then I just got this, and if I'm being honest, when I was first prepped to the whole idea of the Acoustasonic, I was really skeptical. I was like, I don't know, it kind of like doesn't look like my vibe. Mm-hmm. It just didn't seem like something that I would actually play, and then I got it, and all the acoustic settings on it sound really good. And then you switch to the electric, and you get to do cool stuff like Weezer songs or something.
Yeah.
Where it starts like Pork and Beans or something. I'm not sure on which ones, but you get to do really cool stuff and just flip the switch and you're an electric. And it doesn't really feed back much. You could play it with the whole rig through an amp and it still sounds really good. And I did some recording with it, and where I'd usually switch a guitar, it's like, okay, I need a parlor guitar, and I rolled off the tone, and it's not a tone, it just like switches guitars. It's stuff that's beyond my head, but I don't ask too many questions, I just use it, you know. But it's better not to ask questions sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, do you want to grab whatever guitar you want to kind of demo your pedal board here? But before we get there, Henry, why don't you talk to us about your amp setup? Clearly, you have a lot in the room, and you already mentioned earlier that you always have 2 amps running. So what are we hearing today, and why do you like to use 2 amps, and in what way do you use them? Are they like a stereo setup, or is it kind of like in series, so it's, you know, just more of everything?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to use, or a lot of my favorite guitar players use multiple amps, and it's always cool to mix in different kinds of tones. But recently, since we've just been inside a house, I've been using more smaller amps to record with, because you could get better tones out of them without it being, you know, 100 watts.
Yeah.
Out on tour, I use these cabs down here, and the Bandmaster, the Showman, and the Vibroverb.
Wow.
So it's really loud, and, you know, sound guys usually don't like me, but I have them low. They're like on 2 or 3. But they got Eminence speakers in them. They sound really great, but for this room, they're too much. So I've been messing with these Prince. I just got this Princeton it was a gift from Jason Klein at Fender. He also gifted me this White Falcon, and he's been a huge help on tour, and, you know, when something breaks. And he just gifted me this beautiful, I think it's Chris Stapleton, brown face reissue of the Princeton. But so it has, I think, the harmonic tremolo or something.
Mm-hmm.
But at the studio where I work at a lot, called 64 Sound, they have a brown face Vibrolux that sounds amazing, and it's one of my favorite amps. And this has the 12-inch speaker, so it's more of leaning towards that or deluxe than Princeton sounding.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a really beautiful amp, and it really captures the image of the guitar that you're playing through it. It's not very distorted at all. It doesn't really break up, but it has a very nice response. And then I'm using this with my dad's old Vibrolux. I think it's a 59, but it's a tweed that a punk in the 80s painted red. And I think he traded like a Japanese Strat for it or something back in the day, and it sounds amazing, and it breaks up really well. Another one of my favorite amps for recording is this little Champ that is my friend Gilbert's, and he's been letting me. I've borrowed it for about 3 years now, and if he ever wants it back, it's gonna be a thing, you know.
It'll be some horse
I'm not
trading.
gonna let it go.
There'll be some horse trading involved, some wheeling and dealing. Now, before we move to your pedal board, Henry, you already mentioned, you know, your love for Neil Young, which I've seen him live a few years ago, and his amp setup is similar to that, where it's kind of like you're wondering if it's going to fall over, and it also reminds me of Mike Campbell, who I know that you guys got to do that cover with. So you're kind of paying homage to your heroes through your amp stack.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I didn't invent anything. You know, I'm not doing anything original. I'm just learning, and I'm paying very close attention.
Yes.
But so yeah, Mike Campbell, and I saw Neil Young, and, you know, all the old amps, the tweeds, the magnetones, and something about when people use multiple amps and get different tones out of them. I'm also using the Strymon Flint, and I'm sending out the stereo to both amps. So when the tremolo's going, it's going in between them, which is really cool. And then Mike Campbell, the way he uses Princetons is why I use Princetons. He gets a really amazing tone out of them. Yeah. These Prosonics are really cool, and I hope people don't find out about them, because they were Fender's version of the Mesa Boogie in the 90s that Zinke made, and they're amazing amps, and I hope nobody goes and buys them.
Well, you just kind of let the cat out of the bag there.
Yeah. I had to think about that before I did this. It's like, what shouldn't I talk about? But, yeah.
Well, Henry, I think it's time to talk about your pedal board. I know you did a great video with Earthquaker, and I know a lot of their pedals are on your board, but I can't see what's going on in your pedal board, so just walk us through everything and kind of play the pedals and play the combination of pedals that you would use on stage.
Yeah. So, like you said, I think Earthquaker pedals are pretty much my favorite pedal. My favorite pedals in general, because even, you know, they have fuzz pedals, but even their weird pedals like the Afterneath and the Rainbow Machine, they force you to do things that you wouldn't normally do. We did this thing for Vogue where we did a sound, or we did this thing for Vogue where they had this video of Kendall Jenner walking around a garden, and they wanted something that sounded like beautiful but also, you know, out there. And I knew immediately I thought, okay, Earthquaker. Like, let's just find a pedal and just do something simple with it. And I asked my friend Vice if I could borrow his Afterneath. And sure enough, I used that, and that was it. They loved it. And so it could be as simple as that. But so to split up the two amps, I use a Lele or Lele, however you say it. They're German, but ABT pedal.
Okay.
It has the phase switch and stuff on it, but it's really nice. They're built like tanks. Then I have the carbon copy analog delay going to 1 amp, and the Flint going to both of them.
Okay.
So probably the most vital thing to my board setup is overdrive, a good overdrive pedal, because I use the Fender amps a lot, and you know, you get backline amps that don't sound that great. I know my amps sound great, but if I'm flying to England, I have no idea what the amps are going to sound like. So I kind of use the overdrive to sculpt the tone of the amps so that no matter what amps I get, it sounds pretty much the same. So without any pedals, I sound like it's a pretty clean tone. You know, kind of chimey. And then I'm using the Red Llama, which I found out about through Mike Campbell, and that's pretty much what he uses. And just with the Red Llama on right now. And it gives you that kind of tube saturation thing. That's really cool. But yeah, so that's the main overdrive. And then when I go to a solo, I kick on the hoof pedal that Earthquaker makes, and it just super big muffy. I forget which big muff it was modeled after, but it sounds good, so it doesn't really matter. And I also use the Park fuzz. I go in between which ones I use for. You know, it gives you that boost in volume and sustain.
Now, do you ever stack your fuzzes? I know that you just said that you either use one or the other fuzzes with the Red Llama. Do you ever use like multiple fuzzes at once, or is that too much?
You know, I use one fuzz, but sometimes I'll turn on, I have a DOD stereo chorus that I use, and sometimes I kick that on with the fuzz.
Oh, let's hear
that. And it gives a really cool, yeah. It's kind of like, or I'll go for like a Chuck Berry thing and just kick that on so it gives a. And then I'll go in between that, and then I have this TC electronic shaker that's really cool. It's kind of Leslie-ish, but I don't really know how to explain it, but it has a really cool. But I use that a lot when going to solos too. Like. It's just kind of a cool thing.
It probably helps like notes and chords really pop out. I know that really stands out in the mix.
Definitely. And then I also have the carbon copy that I use to get that slap back sometimes. I'm a huge like Brian Setzer fan, and it gives you that kind of space echoey thing. And you know Elvis.
Oh yeah.
But it gives you that cool little thing. But yeah, it's pretty simple. And then things like the afterneath, if you kick on for this is like the thing we did. It kind of sounds like a wave in the ocean or something weird.
Yeah.
But it's really cool. And then there's this song called Lizzie where I use the drop pedal, and for the solo I kick on the bit commander, which is a really messed up octave fuzz thingy that's clips really interesting and you can't really control it, but it sounds really cool. But yeah, so normally for that song without any and then you can switch to, you know, this is the bit commander. But it's just, it's cool. You can't really control it, and I'm always messing with the knobs, making it different each time.
Now with the bit commander, is that something you used on Used to Know solo? That there's like a real squirrely solo in that song, Used to Know.
So yeah, Used to Know, that's actually the DOD.
Oh, okay.
It's I think it's I can't remember what I exactly did, but that's pretty much the sound. And I think I used a big muff with it, so. But you know, just single notey and.
Yeah, the phaser gives it like that real liquid feel.
Yeah, the DOD is really cool. Not many people know about them too. More people just play the Boss one, but the DODs, a lot of DOD pedals are really great pedals. And I've gone through, I have a bunch of them, but they're great.
All right, Henry, I appreciate you getting the 3-string back out because I'm curious of how that sounds with your pedal board. So kind of walk us through the sounds and how that incorporates into your, pedal board and how that all coexists.
Yeah, so like I said, I use a lot of the octave pedals to really differentiate the tones. But a lot of our songs are just pretty simple, fast, and I do stuff like. But it's pretty simple for the clean tone or the basic part. The red llama's always on. And then I go to the hoof for when I do anything solo-y or for choruses, and it's just great big muff tone.
Cool.
Then for.
Go ahead.
Yeah?
Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. My bad. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're all good. And then for parts like Bet My Brains, I start the song by using the octave. I go to the chorus, so it's a lot of dancing around with my feet, and then I use the DOD for the verses. And then I go back to the the hoof and the drop pedal, but it covers a lot of ground.
Man, that hoof and drop pedal combination is deadly. It sounds great.
Yeah, Yeah, it's really cool. And what I also like about the 3 strings is that it could sound super, or I don't know if it's just the way I play it, but you can be super, I can play super soft 1 second with the same distorted tone, and then play super hard, and it's very, you know, I feel like... I don't know what word I'm going for.
It's like very touch sensitive.
Yeah, which is really cool, and it's all right there. You know, I don't have to look for anything. But yeah. And then sometimes I pull out the capo, and there's certain songs like She Gets Around from the last record where I change the drop to just a full-on octave down with no, none of the octave up, and it gets like here. Then I throw on the carbon copy. And then but yeah, I switch in between the stuff, and it's cool. It's fun.
I'm glad you kind of broke down that song real quickly. She Gets Around, because that was a song that like catches your ear, and it's like, man, I'm very curious of what's all going on in there.
Yeah, a really cool thing about it is that people don't know is in school I never played like guitar or anything. I first played percussion, but then I play tuba and trombone, and so in the intro to that song, it's first just the guitar. A lot of people think it's the bass. But then there's a chorusy doon, doon, doon that I played trombone, and we pitched it down an octave and put a phaser on it.
Wow.
And yeah, so I got to sneak a horn in there, which was pretty fun. But yeah.
Well, man, I have one last question for you, and it is kind of off topic, but it's also still related, is I know that you have a pet pig, Beasley. Now,
yeah, Beasley.
I'm curious, does Beasley ever hang out when you jam? Because I know I have a dog, and other people that have pets, sometimes their pets find comfort being near you while you're playing your instruments, whether it's unplugged or sometimes very loud. I'm just curious how Beasley interacts with your music.
You know what? He likes guitar, and he really likes when I sing. But he doesn't like drums or motorcycles, anything that's really fast, and he like runs away. But yeah, he really likes when I sing, and that's why I use the hoof pedal over all the other big muff versions, is just because, you know, I have a pig, so I feel like I need to rep it. But yeah, they got to work on the Beasley pedal, which is just like the new version of the hoof. I don't know what I'd do to it, because I like it as it is, but maybe just a different color with a picture of Beasley on it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I feel like Julie and Jamie would be behind that at Earthquaker. They would definitely support that idea. Julie's great. I mean, everybody at Earthquaker is so nice, and they've been super great to me. So yeah, it would be pretty cool. If we could get a Beasley pedal. Well, Henry, I really appreciate you, man. It's exciting to hear that you guys are back in the studio, kind of working out a new record. Yeah. So hopefully we'll hear that this year, and hopefully we'll see you guys live. In the meantime, where should people check you out online, whether it's about the band stuff? I know you mentioned you and your girlfriend got a project you're working on. Where is online a good way to keep track of Starcrawler stuff and Henri Cash stuff? Well, there's starcrawlermusic.com. There's going to be a lot of stuff coming very soon. I guess Instagram's probably the best place where you could find me and, you know, the band. And Facebook, we're trying to keep up more, but, you know, get kind of lazy. Yeah. I'm not on the... Are people still on Facebook as much? I think there's people out there. But Facebook Marketplace is dangerous. That's the only reason I go on Facebook anymore. For guitars? Yeah, for amps. But all these... I never pay street price for anything. This Vibroverb, these go for so much. I paid, I think it was $500 for it. Man, that ain't fair. Arizona. That ain't fair. But it was flooded. It was flooded out, so it needed a lot of work done to it. But yeah, I'm like a hawk on Craigslist. Yeah, you're like a success story, and like eBay and like
Yeah.
sharking on the web for finding gear.
Yeah. I've been doing it since I was like 12 years old.
Man.
I'd show up like this tall to the Craigslist deal with my little brother. You know, we put all our money together. But yeah, it's one way to do it.
Yeah, man.
I heard if you get your kids into guitars, they won't have money to buy drugs.
Well, that's your goal. It's a new program at
There
Dare.
you go. There you go. Yeah.
Well, Henry,
Cool.
thank you so much for hanging out and talking gear. I appreciate you. I can't wait to rock
Thank
out
you.
with you in person next time you guys hit Nashville.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Thank you so much.
Stay safe out there, everyone. Keep rocking.